been in a teaching series called "Why Can't We Be Friends?" And we're asking that question not really rhetorically, not really in the way that it's asked in the song, but actually asking it and trying to find some answers. Like trying to look around and say, it seems like we're struggling to be friends. It seems like we're struggling to get along in the world right now. The people that we're sharing the planet with, that we're not exactly all seeing eye to eye on some things. And so we wanted to get into the scriptures and to get into the character and nature of Jesus and talk about some relationships and see if there's anything that we could learn that would make us better friends to each other. So hopefully that's been helpful to you. And this week we're going to look at a wall between our friendships, between us, that's not a new problem, but it looks like a new problem. Does that make sense? It seems like it's a worse problem right now than it's ever been before, but we're going to see as we get into the book of Genesis today, that we're going to see even at thousands of years ago in some of the earliest recorded stories in human history, we have this problem still alive and well, just in humanity's origins. We have this problem, and perhaps it's amplified today by the ways that we communicate, by technology, by the ways that we talk to each other and interact with each other, but it's not new. So, why can't we be friends? Today's answer today is because we don't actually know each other, right? One of the biggest problems that we have that makes it difficult for us to be friends is we don't actually know each other. We find ourselves face to face with people that we don't really understand, that we don't really know that well, and it makes it very, very difficult for us. We have snippets of information about people all around us. We fill that in. We fill in the gaps with our own expectations, our own interpretation, and then we top it all off with a heavy dose of relational negativity. Right? That's kind of what we sort of assume the worst in other people. We want people to believe the best about us. We're like, my intentions are always good, even when my actions are bad. But to other people, we assume their intentions are always bad, even if their actions are good. Right? This is just sort of some of what we do. You don't have to admit it. That's fine. I already know. I know. While you're, if you want to talk amongst yourselves for a second, I'm going to do something. Sorry about that. It's not part of the message. My wife is not here to tell me, don't forget to take your jacket off before you go up there. It's going to annoy you. So, how do I get back from that? Last week we were talking about Jacob and Esau. We're going to stay with Jacob and Esau. Last week we talked about him. This week we're talking about him. And next week we're going to talk about him. There is so much tension and so many problems between these two brothers that we can learn from, that we're just going to stick with them for the remainder of this series. And last week, we talked about how these two brothers are born different. They look different. They have different hopes and dreams for their own lives. And then they're even raised differently. One of them is raised primarily by their mother and is encouraged to stay home. He's praised when he stays home. The other is raised primarily by his father, and he's praised for leaving the home and going out and killing animals and bringing back food. So they're raised very, very differently, and these parents kind of pit them against each other. And we talked about how one of the biggest reasons that we have being friends, one of the biggest problems that we have in being friends is we're different, right? And so Jacob and Esau, these two different brothers, shortly after where we left off last week, shortly after their teenage years, they part ways, and they go off and live separate lives. And a lifetime really does pass between the two meetings, between the last time they talked to each other as teenagers. We're around 30 years later in the story, and they have not spoken yet. And the last time they spoke, it wasn't great. They weren't in a good place relationally. They were pretty mad at each other. Esau had every reason to be mad at Jacob, and Jacob had sort of been pitted against Esau by his own mother, and they've got some real relational problems. And then decades pass, and we're going to see today what happens whenever they meet each other again. These two brothers who are so different, and now a lifetime has passed and they don't even know each other. They don't even know. Jacob doesn't even know what kind of guy Esau is, and Esau doesn't even know what kind of guy Jacob is. They don't know what each other has been up to for all of these years. Maybe there have been some rumors and things, but nothing clear. They didn't have a MySpace, right? There was no clarity of what MySpace. I was checking ages. I want to see how old everybody was in the room. They didn't have Friendster, MySpace. And then, so we're going to look at Genesis chapter 30. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information leading up to whenever they actually meet. So we can see, here's what's happened. Decades have passed since they've talked. And then in Genesis chapter 32, verse 3, Jacob decides he needs to pass through an area where he knows his brother Esau is. And so it says, Jacob sent messengers on ahead to his brother Esau, who was living in the region of Seir, near the land of Edom. Now, here lies the first problem in the whole ordeal. They don't know each other, right? They haven't spoken for decades. And what does Jacob do to his own brother? He sends a messenger on ahead to talk to him instead of talking to him face to face. They've had no interaction for decades. The last time they talked, it was kind of an argument. They grew up, and now they're going to communicate by way of a bunch of middlemen. And guess what? The messages get a little jumbled. As it turns out, this is not the best way for them to communicate to each other after all this time. Now, I'm going to level with you about something here as we look into this story, and I think it's going to be clear to you too. It's a struggle for me to understand these two brothers. Like, I can't actually put a finger on how either one of them is feeling at any point. I can't actually tell, like, what the intentions of Jacob's heart actually are. It's really, he's pretty enigmatic in the story. Esau, I can't really tell what he's thinking, what he's feeling. And I think that kind of, in a way, sort of preaches the sermon itself. Like, even the writer, even the person recording the story records it in such a way that we can't really tell what they're feeling. We can't really tell what kinds of people these are and what kind of interaction it is that they're having. And then it's so clear that they can't tell what each other are thinking either. And that's one of the biggest problems is these people don't know each other. They're trying to pursue some sort of new friendship and new pathway in their relationship, and they don't even know. You don't even know who Esau is. You haven't talked to him for decades. You don't even know who Jacob is. You have no idea what kind of person this is that you're dealing with. In verse 4 it says, he told them, this is the message that he sends, give this message to my master Esau. Humble greetings from your servant Jacob. That's a good start, right? Humble greeting. Or is it? I don't know. I can't tell with this guy. I mean, if you're being humble, do you start out by saying, listen, man, I couldn't be more humble, right? I'm the humblest I've ever been in this moment right now. Like, is that how? I don't know. I don't know if he's being humble or I don't know if he's trying to start a fight. I can't really tell. I can't tell if this is true humility or a hashtag humble brag. And here's part of what makes it a little bit difficult to tell. I'm so humble. Humble greetings from your servant Jacob. Until now, I've been living with Uncle Laban, and now I own cattle and donkeys and flocks of sheep and goats and many servants, both men and women. This is how humble I am. I've sent these messengers to inform my Lord of my coming, hoping that you will be friendly to me. Now, is this a positive interaction? Is this a good way to start it? I don't know. I can't tell. Does Esau know how Jacob really feels from the message that he just received? Assume you're hearing the message in the same way that he did. Can we really tell who Jacob is or what his intentions are here? Not really. Not really. This is probably not the best way to start the interaction. And remember, the last time they dealt with each other, Jacob had stolen Esau's blessing. Like, in this culture and in this time, they really believed that the firstborn son was supposed to receive the lion's share of blessing from his father's line and a blessing from God. That the firstborn son should be the richest, should be the most powerful, should be the one to truly carry the name forward. And that's the last interaction they had, is Jacob stole that from his brother. And then decades later, he sends a message on ahead that says, guess what, Esau, you're going to be really happy to hear this. I'm doing great. I'm so blessed. I got so many servants. I got so much money. And my dollar bills got dollar bills. He sends this message ahead. And what kind of message is this? What is he actually sending? It's hard to tell. Will it make Esau angry? I don't know. Will it help the relationship? Will it prepare the way for friendly passage? I don't know. Is he going to be happy to hear his brother's doing well? I don't know. Is the tension building for you? Do you just wish I would read on? After delivering the message, verse 6, the messengers returned to Jacob and reported, look at this, we met your brother Esau, and he is already on his way to meet you, with an army of 400 men. And Jacob was terrified at the news. Now, did Esau level a threat against his brother? No, not really. I mean, that's quite a squad to be rolling with. I mean, if you don't mean harm, then 400 is kind of a lot. But we don't really know Esau. That might just be how he rolls. He might go everywhere with a squad of 400 men. Jacob doesn't know that. He doesn't know that Esau, oh yeah, everywhere Esau goes, he takes 400 men with him. It's no big deal. Jacob's terrified at this news because he didn't have the conversation face to face. And so he doesn't exactly know how to react to it. And his messengers, they don't necessarily, I mean, it doesn't say you should be scared. It doesn't say he's coming to attack you. I mean, there is an exclamation point. That just means they said it loudly, right? They shouted it. But hey, he's coming and he's bringing his friends. There's 400 guys with it. Like, we don't know exactly. But Jacob's terrified at the news. We really have no idea what's happening in the hearts of these two men. We don't actually know them. They don't actually know each other. But we can see some flaws in the way that they're communicating, and that's what I want to teach us today. That's what I hope that we can walk out of here with today. And I hope that this message is very practical and been very helpful. I just want to give you 3 mistakes that I feel like we often make in the way that we communicate with people. And these are mistakes that are especially volatile and especially powerful in our relationships that matter the most to us. If you've got some problems, some friendships that you wish were better friendships, or maybe some friendships that are struggling in your own house, maybe these communicating mistakes are present. Maybe they're things that we can correct together. So is that all right? You want 3 mistakes? You want 4 mistakes? I don't have 4. You got the guide in front of you. You know I can't give you 4. Don't be greedy, church people. 3 mistakes. 3 mistakes we make in the ways that we communicate. The first one is this. We let the messenger distort the message. Why does he send messengers instead of just going himself? Why does Jacob send these people on? Every negative thing that happens in this story, and it's not as bad as it could have been, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. It doesn't go as badly as it could have, but every negative thing could have been avoided if Jacob had just gone and talked to Esau himself. If after all these decades of tension, Jacob just goes out and says, we need to talk, bro. I got to pass through here, and I didn't want to send a messenger and let things get jumbled. If he had done that, it would have been a much better. Why doesn't he just go and talk to his brother face to face? And the short answer, and hear me on this, the short answer, why doesn't he just go and talk to his brother face to face, is because this is just how people did things in those days. Did you catch that? Jacob didn't go talk to Esau because this is just how people did it back then. They would send a messenger instead. But let me ask you, is that a good way to do it? Is that a good reason to do it that way? To say, well, that's just how people do it. Well, what if people do it a stupid way? What if the way that people are communicating is causing wars? What if the way that people are communicating is causing problems in friendships? What if the way that everybody does it isn't the best way? And this happens for us. I mean, has it ever happened to you? Have you ever had a moment where clearly the message that you were trying to send didn't get sent correctly because of the messenger that you used? 2 ways this happens. One, technology. And that's the one that highlights it the most. I think you've probably sent an email or a text message that was completely misinterpreted, even though you used emojis to convey the look on your face as you sent it. It still got misinterpreted. Things that happen with technology that would never happen in a face-to-face conversation. Have you ever read someone's social media status, became completely convinced that it was about you, and then later found out that it had nothing to do with you? And so you waste all this time fuming over, I know that she posted that about me, and then you find out a month later, it's I don't just think about you all the time. My whole life is that. I had no idea. If I had thought that you might think that about it, I would have never posted that to begin with. But we do this. We allow technology, the messenger, to distort the heart of the actual message. Have you ever received information by way of technology that you didn't know was a joke? I didn't know that you were kidding. How could I? The messenger can distort the message. And so we need to be extremely aware of this, extremely conscious of this. It could cause problems in our friendships. It could build walls between us and people that we really care about. The second way that this happens, that messengers distort messages, is gossip. Really just the transfer of information, secondhand information. Have you ever gotten secondhand information from someone who manipulated the information, intentionally or unintentionally, in a way that it was no longer true? Like you heard it from somebody, it had been manipulated, whether they meant to manipulate it or not, but it had been manipulated in such a way that it was no longer the truth. It was no longer the original message. If you're not a part of the problem that you're talking about, and you're not a part of the solution that you're talking about, of the situation that you're talking about, there's a pretty good chance you're just a bad messenger who's distorting the message. And if you're receiving information from someone who is not a part of the problem or part of the original solution, then chances are you're receiving a message that is being distorted, intentionally or unintentionally. Intent aside, messengers distort messages. There's no substitute for direct and honest transfer of information. We got to talk more, right? I would say it this way. We maybe need to eliminate the chatter and have a conversation. Chatter is no substitute for relational equity, right? Chatter, the social media stuff, I'm not saying we have to get off of it. I'm just saying it doesn't take the place of conversations, of face-to-face conversations. And in fact, it may convey things that are never even intended to be conveyed. Text messages do not convey the same level of friendship as face-to-face conversations. We just need to know that. Doesn't mean we can't send text messages anymore. We just need to know that sometimes your message isn't being sent clearly. Sometimes you're not connecting in the ways that you need to connect. It's not a substitute. It is maybe an addition to relationships, but it doesn't take the place of that. And we see it in this story so clearly. If Jacob and Esau had just had a conversation face-to-face instead of having a messenger to convey the message, well, the story ends in chapter 4, or in verse 4 of chapter 32, but it doesn't end there for us. The remainder of chapter 32 is Jacob freaking out. Jacob is losing his mind because his brother Esau, who he doesn't know what he's capable of, doesn't know what his intentions are. His brother is moving his way with 400 men. For what? We don't know. But he's freaking out. He's begging for mercy from God. He actually at one point sends a fortune worth of animals to his brother. It's weird, right? I mean, I wouldn't do that if my brother was mad at me. I might, actually. Depending on the circumstance, it might make sense for me to send him a bunch of goats. But this is what he does. He's like, my brother's so mad at me, maybe he'd be less mad at me if I send him a bunch of cattle and donkeys and goats and try to make up for it and try to like make him receive me friendly. And all of this happens, and then he has this wrestling match with God at the end of chapter 32, which is a very strange passage that we're going to spend a lot of time with next week because it's a lot of fun. But all of this is sort of happening because he's in tension, because he's scared, because he doesn't understand what's happening, because he doesn't actually know his brother or what's about to happen. And then the meeting happens. You ready for the meeting? Genesis 33, verse 1. Then Jacob looked up, and he saw Esau coming with his 400 men. Now, to be fair, if Esau means no harm, that's quite a squad to be rolling with, right? I mean, you're gonna send the wrong message a lot if you mean no harm. But we don't know Esau, so how could we possibly know? He divided the children. This is what Jacob does. He sees an army approaching him, doesn't exactly know why or what's about to happen. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and his 2 servant wives. I know, we're just gonna have to overlook some awfulness in the Old Testament today. Are we okay with that? And be like, man, there's some problems with these people. Yeah, that's why Jesus came. That's the point. I'm glad you got it. There's your gospel message for today. People are messed up, and so Jesus came. That's this in a nutshell. He puts Leah with Leah's children, Rachel with her children, or her specifically her child Joseph, and then his 2 servant wives. He put the servant wives and their children up front. Leah and her children next, and then Rachel, his prize wife, his trophy wife, and her son Joseph last. Does this seem like a strange formation? Now, if we could put aside the obvious upsetting awfulness of this, what's happening here is that Jacob wants to project a different reality than what's actually true, right? If these people are going to come in and attack and they're going to kill my wives, I want to put the least important ones up front. I want them to go after the ones that matter the least. So I'm going to try to project a different reality than the true reality. You see what he's doing here? This is the strategy. It's icky. It's problematic. There are issues with it, but I just want you to see what he's doing. Verse 3, Jacob went on ahead. Are some of you nervous that that's going to be the next point? Like protect your most valued children and put the ones that you think are not probably going anywhere anyways, put them up front. No, that's not the next point. Don't get ahead. As he approached his brother, he bowed to the ground 7 times before him, and Esau ran out to meet him and embraced him, and he threw his arms around his neck, and he slapped a guillotine chokehold on and snapped his neck like Jean-Claude Van Damme. Is that what you're expecting? It's not that fun. It says he threw his arms around his neck, he kissed him, and they both wept. So all of this fear, all of this anxiety, all the things that we were afraid of have no basis in reality whatsoever. Turns out we don't know Esau that well. We don't know what he's capable of. We don't know what he's up to. And then whenever we meet him face to face, we realize he's gonna hug us and give us a kiss. Like he's just gonna be brother. He's just gonna forgive. He's just gonna leave all that stuff behind. Like he's not mad. And then this is what happens. And this is why I made the point that I did earlier to talk about this awful formation that Jacob sets up. And I hope I can do this without us getting. We just got to go culturally to where we were at this time. And I'm not saying it's okay, but I'm just so we can learn from it. Esau looked at the women and the children and asked, "Who are these people with you?" Now, there's a couple of reasons he asks that question. First of all, because Esau didn't bring his wives and children. He didn't know it was a family reunion, right? He brought his army. He's like, I thought this was like a business transaction, or I thought we were going to talk about the trade of land or something. So you brought your women and children. I could have brought my women and children too. I have women and children too, but he didn't. So first of all, he's confused by that. But second of all, and this is a really important thing that we wouldn't necessarily see on the first glance of the story, when Jacob left home, he left home to marry his cousins. He left home to marry his family members. He went to live with Uncle Laban so that he could marry some of Uncle Laban's daughters, his cousins. When Esau looks up and sees these people, who does he see? He sees servant wives and their children. He sees people who are not the people that Jacob left to marry. Because Jacob has put a different reality forward than the real one. He's hiding the truth, right? And the second point that I want us to notice here today that we see from Jacob and the problems that it causes in their friendship is we hide the truth. The second mistake that we make in our friendships and in the way we communicate, we hide the truth. We project a different reality than the real one in order to protect ourselves. In order to protect what's valuable to us, we sort of have a tendency to lie. Maybe we do. Maybe we are all exactly as pretty as we are on every Instagram photo that we ever post of ourselves, right? Maybe that is reality. Maybe that is #NoFilter, right? Maybe we are all just as witty in person as we are on Twitter, right? Maybe we are as interesting and kind and likable in real person as we are on Tinder. Right? Swipe right and find out, right? That's maybe that's not true. Maybe we don't project a different reality than the real one. Maybe we don't hide the truth from people, but I would suggest to you that this seems like a really big problem for us right now. It seems like a really big problem, especially in a community that really wants to get along. Like we really want to build something here where we like each other and we love each other, and that we could actually have a community that moves the kingdom of God forward in such a way that the love that exists in this community would become a love that spreads to the community around us, that spreads to the city around us, that people would actually look to us, like we said last week, that they would look to us and they would see unity, and that would actually cause them to believe that somehow God is with us. That people would look at our church and say, I can't believe people that different than each other, that people who are that far apart in their opinions and their political affiliations and their beliefs about certain things, and that those people are somehow working together to do good in our city, that people would look at that and they would see that and they would praise God for it. They would say, well, God must be with them, because that's not natural. That wouldn't happen without God. And so this is the thing that I think this is one of the things that I think is necessary. I think we got to be honest with each other. I think we got to be open. As often as we joke about the ways that we hide our truth, I want you to consider just how big of a mistake it is. We're afraid of being known. We're afraid of people seeing the real us, and the reaction that we have to that is an irrational one. Right, give me a minute to explain this. If you project a version of yourself that doesn't really exist, a sort of lie, so that people will like you, best case scenario, people fall in love with a version of you that doesn't actually exist. And worst case scenario, people don't want anything to do with that version of you that isn't even the real you, and they would have liked the real you. Right? I mean, this is what happens whenever we hide the truth. It's a lose-lose situation. Either way, you lose. You project, you hide your truth, you hide who you really are, and either people fall in love with a version of you that doesn't exist, and you either got to keep up the facade or live with this insecurity all your life that if they knew the real me, they wouldn't want anything to do with me anymore. That's best case scenario. And worst case scenario is people would have liked the real you and they don't like the fake you. That's the option that we leave ourselves with. Let's put this statement up. And this is a lot of words, but maybe we can get the heart of it. People who don't like the real you aren't worth the energy it takes to fool them into liking the fake you. And the people who love the real you deserve to know the real you. And this is a community where we really are inviting the real you. We're actually saying, I'm going to assume you've got some faults and some flaws and some problems and some issues and some opinions that are really different than mine. And I'm going to assume that there are some problems in your character and the problems in the way that you think about people and the way that you treat people. I'm going to assume all that's true, and we're still going to accept you. We're still going to welcome you. And I would encourage you to lean into the reality of this statement, that you wouldn't be afraid to hide the truth. You wouldn't feel like there's a need to project a different reality, that you wouldn't have to, this self-preservation thing that we do, that you would just assume that we would like you, that we would accept you, that the people in this community, the people that care about you the most, they deserve to know the real you. They deserve to see the real you. Is this helpful? All right, let me give you the last thing here. And the last thing kind of sums up a little bit of what this is really all about. And hopefully it'll help too. These are the children God has graciously given me. This is Jacob answering the question. Esau looks back and he's like, who are those people? That's not who you left to marry. That's not our family. That's not who you said you were at. Who are these people? And then he says, well, these are the people that God gave to me, your servant Jacob. Jacob replied. Then the servant wives came forward with their children, bowed before him. Next, Leah and her children, they bowed before him. Finally, Joseph and Rachel came forward and bowed before him. All of this is very strange. I mean, it really is. I mean, culture aside, it's all very odd that they're meeting their long-lost uncle for the first time ever, and their reaction is to, first of all, they're all trembling with fear. They're all afraid that they might die today, and they meet their uncle for the first time, and they come and they bow before him and call him my Lord, and there's just so much like interpersonal problems and tension and this sort of family awkwardness that's so uncomfortable and problematic. And then he asks an interesting question. He says, and by the way, what were all the flocks and herds that I met as I came? I had to walk through a zoo to get to you. What was that all about? And remember, Jacob sent all of these animals, a fortune worth of animals, to greet his brother as a way of trying to buy his friendship. That's what he's doing. But Esau doesn't even understand it because he doesn't know Jacob. They don't know each other. So the things that Jacob is doing to try to buy friendship with him, they don't even make sense to him. He's like, what? So who are these people? I don't understand this. And what's with all the animals I had to walk through to get here? And Jacob replied, they were a gift to you to ensure your friendship. These massive amounts of peace offerings that Jacob sent to Esau don't even make sense to him. I couldn't for the life of me understand what that was all about. What's with all of those animals? And I think this highlights the third mistake. And this is the mistake at the heart of why we can't be friends. And I think it's something that we can begin to resolve as the Church of Jesus Christ, as the Church of the risen Jesus. We act on bad information. The final blanks in your sermon notes. We act on bad information. If you guys want to be in position, I'm going to wrap up very quickly. Jacob unnecessarily throws a fortune at a problem that doesn't really exist. Do you see that? He throws a fortune worth of his flocks and herds and his animals at a problem that isn't even there. Esau doesn't even read it as that. He doesn't even see it as like, oh, you were trying to, okay, you're buying peace. I got it. He doesn't even see it that. It's just, he's acting on bad intel. Jacob has bad intel, and he's letting that inform his strategy, and he ends up with something that just adds more confusion. It just adds more tension to the situation. And here's the really scary thing about this story. Jacob's not a particularly violent person. He never really does anything violent in his life. If he were a violent person, we would not have had an awkward family reunion. We would have had a war. And that's a reality that exists for many of us, that people who are violent and aggressive and have that type, if he's bent that direction, then we don't have him trying to manipulate his brother into pretending to be friends or anything like that. What we have instead is Jacob mounting an attack before Esau does, when Esau's not even planning an attack. That's the scary part of all of this. He acts on bad information. Fortunately, thank God we're dealing with a person who's not particularly violent, but plenty of other times in the scriptures and throughout human history, we have people acting on bad information and wars begin. Divorce papers are filed. People walk out of each other's lives because of bad information. Because we couldn't just talk to each other face to face, because the messages were getting screwed up by the messengers that we were using. Like, it just didn't come through very quickly. Because we were hiding our true selves, because we were sort of projecting something that didn't really exist. We're acting on bad information, and I think it's unnecessary. I think we could learn from this. I think we're supposed to learn from this. I think we're supposed to look at these brothers thousands of years ago dealing with a problem that we're still dealing with today, and say, why don't we start doing it differently? Why don't we not say, oh yeah, we pass information like that, and we have friendships like that, because that's how everybody does it. Why don't we start saying, if it's a bad way, it's a bad way. Let's not do that. Let's have some face-to-face conversations. Let's eliminate the chatter where we can and have some conversations. Let's pursue real friendships with each other. Let's let our guard down. What have you got to lose? Right? I mean, I really mean it whenever I say it's a lose-lose situation. Whenever you project a different version of yourself than the real you, you got nothing to gain in that. Wouldn't it be better if we just looked at each other a little more, if we actually knew each other? How much violence and aggression and hurt and loneliness would be avoided if we were a little more careful about our message and messenger relationships. And if we were a little more honest and exposed to the people that we really care about. What if we did the best we could to just stop the flow of bad information? Just catch it in its tracks. Our world does more communicating right now than it's ever done, and is debatably worse at it than it's ever been. There's more bad information flying around than there ever has been. It's a good thing we're here, right? It's a good thing the Church of Jesus is here to start a movement, start a revolution. And maybe that revolution begins with us becoming the kinds of people who say, well, just because that's how everybody else passes information, that doesn't mean that's how I'm going to do it. Just because you think a text is the best way to do this, I don't think that's the best way to do it. I think we should talk to each other. Just because you think social media is the best way to get that message out there, I'm not sure that's really the best way to get every message out there. I think maybe we need to talk to, maybe we need to get together. Maybe we need to sit in a room like this and talk it out together. Maybe we need to hug somebody, right? Maybe we don't. We need to look at the parts of our life where we have allowed human contact to be eliminated for convenience sake or for whatever, and say, I think that's a problem. I don't think that's helping. You up for it? Let me pray for you. We'll be dismissed. Heavenly Father, thank you, God, so much for your word today. God, I pray that it is spoken clearly. I pray that that every person receives exactly what you would have them receive, that we would be changed in all the right ways. God, I believe your word's true. I believe it's good. I believe you have good intentions for all of us. I believe you can heal our friendships. I believe none of our relationships are too far gone. God, that marriages can be healed, that father to son, father to daughter, mother to son, mother to daughter, these relationships can be reconciled and healed. I believe that's what you're about. You're about bringing healing to your people. We want to see it happen. Use us to do it. We pray it in Jesus' name. Amen.